Welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. We believe that the relationship between a dad and daughter is one of the most important relationships in a woman's life. Our mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by spreading the voices of girl dads to the world and give love and support to all of our dads and their daughters. Let's get to it. Let's tune in. Hey guys, real quick, before we jump into the episode, I need you to do the 3 S's for me. What is that? First of all, I need you to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss an episode of our podcast. Number 2, I need you to share it with your family and friends. Don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone else. Lastly, I need you to say something. Leave us a comment. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you want to see from us, what you like, what you don't like. We are open to your suggestions. We want to know everything that you want to let us know about the podcast. All right. Now, get back to the episode. All right. Welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. I am your host, Earnest James, and I believe that the relationship between a dad and his daughter is one of the most important relationships in a young woman's life. And so our mission is to promote the voices of girl dads and their daughters to the world by spreading their voices, and also in order to combat the narrative of the absent father and the fatherless daughter. If you haven't already, make sure you guys listen, like, subscribe, and share to our podcast on all of your social media platforms as well as ours. And also make sure you guys are checking us out on our new YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. Again, that's the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network on YouTube, where you can not only find the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, where we have conversations with other girl dads like myself, and sometimes even daughters on to talk about the daddy-daughter relationship, but you will also find the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast there as well, which is our original first podcast that I started. We actually, at the time of recording this, just hit 200 episodes on there, right? So make sure you guys go again to our check out the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, as well as the Girl Dad Discussions podcast on our YouTube channel, the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. All right, so today, just like any other day, we are blessed with the guest, Miss Abigail. How you doing?
I am well. Thank you for having me.
No problem. First of all, I want to say thank you for being on the podcast, because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you're here with me. And thank you also for being on the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. I know we have had you as a guest on the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. So to my listeners, make sure you guys, after you finish listening and watching this episode, that you actually go back to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast and be able to watch Abigail's interview on that podcast as well. But we're here today on the Girl Dad Discussions podcast to talk about, again, the daddy-daughter relationships and those dynamics around it. And so do me a favor, Abigail, for this audience who may not have listened to your episode on the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, do me a favor, introduce yourself to the audience. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Abigail. I go by Abigail the Warrior Princess. And the reason why I go by that is because I believe that God calls me his warrior princess. I have a ministry. It's called Battle Ready Wives. Basically, I believe in empowering all wives, whether single, married, divorced, or widowed. I believe that, he who finds a wife finds a good thing. So no matter what your marital status is, your wife, and to help empower the wife. I believe in fighting for marriages. And so I'm so passionate about that. And I'm more passionate about the healing. So I'm so excited to have this conversation today because a lot of times, even within marriage, the relationship that you have with your father, it can make or break how your relationship shows up in marriage. So I'm just happy to be a part of this conversation.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I agree with that. Let me slow down. I agree with that 100%. One of the things we talk about on this podcast, and we'll get into it a little bit later, is the ebook that I wrote called The Core Four, which is the four core values that every daughter should get from her father. And one of the things that I like to point out is that even though those core values come from your father, as a woman, as you grow up, you still need those same values. You just look for it to get it from someone else, right? And so once you get into a relationship or once you get married, those same values you still need to be poured into you. But now you're looking for it from your mate. And so
Right.
that relationship that you grew up with your dad definitely plays a big part in your own marriage, like you said, because you're looking for those values and you're looking at that example that you had, from your dad, and that kind of reflects in the person that you choose to spend your life with.
It
So I agree with
absolutely
that 100%.
does.
So let's go back a little bit.
Yeah.
First of all, what is your dad's name, and tell us a little bit about your dad.
Okay, so my father, his birth name is Cecil Scatliff. Now he doesn't. No one ever. I've never heard anyone call him by his government name,
Right.
and so it's it's one of the two. Mostly the family calls him Sonny, and then in
Mhm.
public they call him Tasha. And then some people will put both together and they'll say Sonny T. So that's his name. That's what he's known or was known by.
Mhm.
Um, and so that was his name. My father was. My father was an interesting person to me.
Mhm.
He didn't necessarily have a profession. You know what? To be because I'm trying to keep it PG, to keep it
Right.
clean.
Right.
Um, to be completely honest, my father didn't have a career. The one career I knew of was not legal.
Right.
But I'll be happy to still, even with that, like there's still some things that still, although it came along with his profession, there was still some level of protection in there, some things that I recognized as I looked back on his life,
Mhm.
that is still, he still protected me
Right. Right.
in a lot of ways more than I even realized at the particular time. But my father was one, he was very passionate about horses. One of the things that we got to do together, the one thing that we really came together with was this particular band back home. It's called Jam Band. And so that was, he loved music.
Mhm.
But that particular band, like, we bonded a lot over that because it was like a very big staple from where I'm from, St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. So it's a very, very popular name back, back home. So that was one of his favorite. He loved music. He loved horses. My father was still, he was very generous with even if he didn't have much, he would still give what he did have. And that's a lot of things that I remember. Unfortunately, for part of my life, a lot of good I didn't remember. Sometimes we
Mhm.
tend to just remember and hold on to the bad. But now I remember a lot of the goods, and I'm thankful that those memories got restored or healed, whereas I'm not seeing just the negative aspect of it, but I
Yeah.
get to see my father from a whole different light. Actually, at his funeral, because my father was murdered last year. And
Gotcha.
so this is the first time I'm really talking about him publicly. So I just noticing some emotions and stuff like that. So just bear with me a little
No, no
bit.
doubt, no doubt.
Yeah. So
Yeah, take a breath, take a second, and then definitely my condolences on that with the passing of your father. And as you were talking, I heard you say we, right? So I'm guessing you're not an only child. How many other siblings do you have?
Oh, I love you just telling people this. I have 5 siblings.
Okay,
Each of us have a different mother.
okay.
I
It
came
happens.
first.
It happens.
I I came first. I'm the eldest, and then I have three siblings, all which born in the same year. One April,
Okay.
one September, one October, and then we have the youngest born a few years later. So it's
Yeah, yeah.
it's five of us on my dad's side.
Okay, cool, cool. And like I said, it happens, right? So I come from a two parent household, and it's nine of us. We have nine siblings, or actually, I say I have nine siblings from my dad and my mom. However, um, and I'll be careful, like you as well. In certain professions that our family has, we sometimes run into that, and so I talk about my brother a lot. And my brother, had a different profession growing up, and so he has several children with several different mothers, and of course, same as you, some born in the same year. Multiple in the same year. So definitely with different professions come different lifestyles. And so I definitely understand that. One of the things that I want to talk about, because one of the questions that I usually ask dads, right, when I have them on this podcast, is I ask them, what does it mean for them to be a girl dad, right? And so when I have daughters on, a lot of time I ask, you know, what does it mean for them? Or should I even say, do they even resonate as being a girl, not a girl dad, but a daddy's girl, And so I present that same question to you. How do you feel with your relationship with your dad? Do you consider yourself a daddy's girl?
I did not necessarily consider myself as a daddy's girl. Now, growing up, I always I lost count on how many times I'll see people and they will just always remind me about how much I look like my dad.
Yeah.
Like I can't tell you, when people see me, they'll just automatically say, "You're Sonny's daughter." I'm like, "Yep." How did you know? I look like him. And so initially that would be the closest thing I really could think of really saying I'm a girl's dad, but I never really felt it. Or maybe I didn't fully understand what it really was. Because seeing some others with their dads, I didn't have that. So that's what kind of made me feel like I didn't really feel like I was a girl dad, because I didn't
Mm,
have that extremely close relationship with my father. And so right now I feel like what the Lord was able to do, unfortunately it took my father's passing, but to be able to restore that part, whereas I now can see myself as a girl dad, that I know without a shadow of a doubt my father loved me the best way he knew how.
mm,
It wasn't the way I wanted 100%, no, but I can appreciate what he did do, and it was enough. And so now, when I think of my dad, I'd be like, I know I'm his daughter. And there was actually a very beautiful experience that I had with my father. It probably was the very last exchange or conversation. It wasn't even a direct conversation, but it's one of the very last things that I remember of my father. That was when I went back home to visit, and my father struggled with a lot of mental health issues. And so in this particular exchange, he was talking, not to me directly, and there was no one else around. I'm gonna let you fill in a piece.
mm,
Pieces of that. So he was talking to someone, but no one was there. Right. But in that moment, I was like, and sometimes, I'm not proud of it, but I just kind of dismiss it as my dad being my dad, okay, he's just acting crazy, right? But the thing is, in that moment, I'm so thankful that God even allowed me to even remember that experience, because part of what he was saying was that, because he saw me, as he's walking, he saw me, and it's like he's having this conversation with this other person, and he's like, that's my firstborn, that's my pride and joy. And so I've never heard my father said that about me. But in that moment, because I was still filled with some bitterness and stuff like that, I'll be like, who are you talking to? And I'm like, how are you telling them? I've never heard you told that to me.
mm.
Right? But I'm so thankful though that the Lord allowed me to even remember that, because while I was, blinded or distracted by all the negative, there was still glimmer of hope, and there's still some good glimmer of good that was there that I dismissed in the moment, but I'm thankful that I can still hold on to it. And so for me, when you say do you feel like I was a girl dad, I had a father who loved me. So yeah, I'm a girl dad. But even more, the relationship that I have with God as Father even solidifies it even the more, because God is actually the ultimate girl dad. And
Yeah.
so even just open up him, and I say this because he's so amazing, because he said he'll be the father to the fatherless. And I've received that, because in many ways, I felt like my father wasn't there. But for him to be able to restore the relationship that I have with, well, not really restore the relationship, but restore the way how I view and see my father. That is just like, I'm just in awe of God, because some of those bad experiences that I had, when I look back on it, now it's like, there's no anger, there's no hate, there's no animosity. There's me appreciating my dad and feeling like I am a girl dad, because I had a father that loved me. He may not have known how to exactly really show it, whereas I could receive it, but there was no doubt that my father loved me.
Yeah, and I love what you said. A couple of things that I want to point out. The first thing you mentioned about that your dad loved you the best that he knew how, and one of the things that I like to talk about, even as us being adults, right? When we get to a certain point where we're adults, is realizing sometimes we it's easy for us to realize our humanity, right? But then we
Yeah.
try, but when we look at our parents, we try to hold our parents to a different standard, because it's like, you're the parent, you should know better. But even when we start thinking about some of the challenges that we've had and experiences that we've had in our own lives, when we start thinking about, wait a minute, the same things that I'm holding my parent, what was my parent going through when they were dealing with, at my age? What were my
Right.
parents dealing with when I was born? Like, how old were they? Because a lot of us, some of us are born to younger parents, that's might have been born in their teens. And it's like, well, you should have
That was
known
me.
better. But when you think about, like,
Right.
my mom was only 17, you know what I
Right.
mean? So when you think about it as an adult and kind of reflect back on
Right.
their experiences, it allowed you to be a little more forgiving, should I say, and
Yeah.
a little, give a little more grace. And also, you also have to look at their experiences growing up, with their childhood, because that's a reflection of how they connect with you as well. Because what were their experiences with their parents, and how was that experience? And so that all plays a part in it. So when you say that, your dad loved you the best that he knew how, I think that's a space of grace that we have to give, number one,
Yeah.
ourselves as well, but definitely to our parents, because they're learning too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, we like to say there's a lot of books on parenting, but there's no manual. Like, nobody really knows.
No,
We
we
all
all
just
winging it.
kind of, yeah, we all just kind of winging it and doing the best that we can,
Yeah.
through our own experiences, and we just cross our fingers and hope for the best. That our kids going to turn out all right. So I definitely wanted to hit on that. And one of the other things that I wanted to say, that you mentioned about, your dad maybe even dealing with some mental health issues, and talking to people, who weren't there. And I remember a time period, and this could also be reflective of your dad as well, that my dad, kind of went through a period where he was heavy on drinking, right? So he drank a lot, but again, hindsight is 2020. Reflecting back on that
Yeah.
time period, I think my dad was really just dealing with depression, because we went through a period where we were like middle, I like to say middle, high middle class. Maybe you would say, like, we had, the house, we had the cars, we had the camper that we would go, take trips in the summertime. We had all of that stuff, and due to some circumstances and things, which I was young, and so I can't even really tell you what all happened. We lost everything. You know what I mean? And so you got a husband, a wife, and 9 kids that were living, this middle class lifestyle, to now going from your own house, your own cars with the yard and the picket fence and all of that, which we had, to now you, your wife, and your 9 kids all staying in one bedroom in your mother's house. You know what I mean? So that's a big transition. And so I
Yeah.
remember having days when, my dad would be in the garage and he would be having a whole conversation. And, you come in there, there's nobody in there but him. You know what I mean? And so also my dad's best friend, who was my mom's brother was murdered around that time as well. And so a lot of times, like I said, hindsight is 2020. When you come in to the garage, because my dad was a mechanic, and you come into the garage and he's having these conversations, and you're looking around, it's like nobody's there. But when you listen, you could tell who he's talking to. And a lot of times he was having conversations with my uncle, who was his best friend at that time, before he was murdered. And you know what I mean? So it's just those things, like we have to look back and we look at their experiences as
Yeah.
parents, and realizing, some of the things that they were dealing with. And it makes it a little bit easier to be able to see, like you said, looking back on hindsight, like, yeah, my dad, maybe wasn't this or wasn't that, but this is what he was. And then being able to be more appreciative about those things.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to point that out, because I think that was important, in this, especially in this space that we're in, dealing a lot with, mental health now. That we all have some things that we're dealing with, and I think it's good for us to give our parents, that little bit of a little bit more of that grace. And so
Grace.
you
Yeah.
mentioned about being able to see your dad in a different light, now after his passing. And so, what would be something that I'll say it this way. So one of the things that I had the opportunity to do this year was we did our very first daddy daughter dance, right, which was sponsored by the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. And the reason why that was so important to me was I often share the story about one of the regrets that I have had, and still have somewhat, as a father, was that I didn't take my daughter to her daddy daughter dance when she was little, right? And
Okay.
so my daughter probably was like 7 or 8. She had her very first daddy daughter dance, and I had to work. And so I was like, all right, I'll miss this one, but I'll catch the next one. At the time of recording this, my daughter's 22, right? And so there never was a next one, right? So we missed, all that time. And I
Yeah.
was like, man, that was one of the things that I regretted. And which, when we started the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, I was like, man, I really want to do this daddy daughter dance, right? I really wanted to have it. And so we
Yeah.
actually did it for the very first time. We had our very first, it's going to be annual, but we had the first one this year, which was the daddy daughter dance. And I did that sort of, again, because of how I felt about missing that daddy daughter dance when my daughter's little. So that being said, is there something that, when you look back on, some things that your dad may have done, or, could have done better, and just be like, you know what, Dad, I appreciate this part of it, but maybe it was just one thing that really would have been important to me if you were able to show up at this space, or you were able to do this thing for me. Because one of the things I want to do with this podcast is to teach, right? And so
Yeah.
I have to reflect back on my very first guest that I had, which was a friend of mine. And at the time of recording the very first episode of the Girl Dad Discussions, he was my first guest, and he was a brand new father, number one, first child. And that first child was a girl. I think she was only like 3 months when we recorded the podcast. And I did that on purpose, because I always want to be able to reflect back on him and say, he's just starting this journey as fatherhood, as being a girl dad. So what are some things that, in each episode, that I can leave for him to be able to say, okay, if he was watching this episode, he can be able to take something from it. So I share
Yeah.
that being, uh, one of my regrets, that I was able to kind of make up for, years later. But if there's something that, you can look back now and say, well, this one thing that, my dad could have done better, or may have done differently, as a way of, just giving that knowledge, or giving that example for our other fathers that are, coming up, or in the midst of raising their daughters, that they don't make that same, mistake.
Yeah. I think the if I can just really kind of pick one thing, I'll kind of hone in on it a little bit, that I wish my father would have done, and that fathers need to know how important this is to be able to tell me I'm
Mhm.
beautiful, reassure me of my beauty, of my worth. My father didn't do that. He probably didn't know how,
Right.
but that was one thing I would wish that he would have done differently. to tell me of my worth, remind me of my value, so that I wasn't going to look for it elsewhere. But I would like to say this, because when you shared about the daddy daughter dance, I do want to say that's very important to show up. No matter how small or insignificant you may think it might mean, you just being there means a whole lot. And one of the probably the best memories I have of my father was a particular time when he showed up when I didn't think that he was, because and again, like, we didn't really, my father was always there. I did find ways that I would always connect with my father. Like, if I knew, and this is as a kid, if I knew what his favorite meal was, like, I'd always cook certain things. If I know I wanted some, I always make sure I cook for my dad and make sure he had it. We had a couple of things that we could have really, like, bond over. Now, this particular time I was in a pageant. And so, like, I was thinking, like, my dad is not into that stuff, because, like, if it's not jam band or anything else, or, like, horse races, those type of stuff, I don't think he's really gonna show up, right? And so it was so beautiful, because at the very end, like, I didn't win the pageant. I got Miss Photogenic. That part I got, but anything else, I didn't win anything else. But at the very end, like, when my family was coming by, to congratulate me and everything, I saw my father and I broke down. Like, at that moment, I felt like the winner, because my father showed up. It didn't matter that I won the trophy or not, but my dad was there, because I thought he wasn't there. I was almost like, not even like, because at this point I'm like in high school, so, like, I'm like already like, oh, he ain't gonna come. Like, I don't even think. I don't know if I asked him, I maybe had told him about it. I don't know, but I just expected, like, he's not into that type of stuff. He's not gonna show up. That meant the world to me, the absolute world to me, that my father showed up. Like, I felt like a winner. Like, bump the whatever prizes y'all had. Like, my dad showed up for me. And so, never, like, overlook those little moments of, and even too, especially if it's something that you might not be involved or interested in, just to show up. It'd be even better if you can kind of get a little involved and understand and show, like, okay, I know what's going on. Like, I like to see little videos now with dads, like, they'll be helping their daughter cheer, like, because they remember their chair, and they help the daughters out like that. That is so cute. Like, it may not be something that you're normally used to, but those moments, listen, those moments we treasure. So yeah, if I say, like, if anything, like, definitely getting that reassurance verbally from my father of my value and worth would have been like, it would have helped, like, so much, so
Yeah.
much. But him showing up when I thought he wasn't going to show up, that meant the absolute world to me.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So one of the things that I talk about with dad, so I one of the things I talk about because I did a lot of work and I don't do as much now, but that was kind of the reason why I started this podcast, because I do work with fatherless daughters, right? And not only fatherless daughters, but I also talk to dads who are reconnecting with their daughters or just reconnecting with their kids in general.
Yeah.
And so the two things that you just mentioned, I think is very important from two aspects. One, as the father, you have to show up, whatever that looks like, whatever capacity that is. And I talk about sometimes when my daughter, when me and my daughter's mom divorced, we were married when we divorced and started to live in separate homes. And this was before Zoom. This was before, video cameras and things of that nature. But we would get on the phone. I would help her with our homework over the phone, and things of that nature, like take a picture of the math problem and send it to me. And then now I'm able to kind of talk to you and walk through it on the phone, and this was before they even moved to another state. So once they moved to another state, it become even that more difficult, should I say, for me to show up physically. But
Yeah.
I was able to do those phone calls. And then, once phones got, where you could talk to each other and, messenger and all this other stuff, that makes it so much easier now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? With social media, that makes it so much easier now for you to show up in whatever version that is. If you can only do FaceTime, if you only do, Zoom messages with your kids, however that is, you just got to show up. That's number
Yeah.
one from the dad's point of view. But also one of the things that you mentioned is doing things that your dad liked. right? Because I remember having this conversation with a young lady who was an adult. She was an adult fatherless daughter, and she identified as a fatherless daughter because her father was around. You know what I mean? When she was growing up, he was around, but he didn't live in the same house, and he never really showed up. But he was around, so she would see him occasionally. And this was in her early 20s when we were having this conversation, and she talked about wanting to have this relationship with her dad. And I was telling her like, well, when you were a child, you had to wait for him to do the things that he was supposed to do as a dad to build that relationship. But now you're an adult, and if this is a relationship that you want, then now you might have to reach out for it. Now you might have to put in the work to say, all right, dad, look, I want this relationship with you. And so again, we started talking about what are some of the things that he liked in order for you to be able to connect with him where he is. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that was important that you even mentioned that, like, all right, what it is the things that my dad might like, and then kind of bond over those things. And I do know that sometimes we feel like, well, I'm the child, he's supposed to do it. Like, yeah, he is supposed to do it.
Yeah.
But if he don't, you know what I mean? We have to get to the point that what's most important to us right now. And what a lot of times what's most important to us right now is we want that relationship. And as adults, sometimes we might have to take the lead on it again, because depending on our parents' upbringing and their experience, they might not know how to connect with you in the way that you want to connect. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So you might have to do that connections. So now I know we mentioned about, you being able to see your dad in a different light. And I know we talked a little bit more before we started recording, even in how you decided to dress today is a reflection of how you see your dad now, right? In hindsight. So tell us a little bit about your thought process and, how you feel about your dad now, in the space that you are in.
Yeah. So what the Lord really showed me was he gave me this word capacity. And I zoned in on it, I focused on it. And what I realized was that, we all have different capacities. And
Mhm.
my father loved me from the capacity that he had. Whereas I was expecting more, he didn't have it. So the reality is, it wasn't that, like, so the things that my father didn't do, I don't look at it anymore as, oh, he just didn't do it because he didn't love me. Oh, he didn't show up because he just didn't want to. I now thoroughly believe that the reason anything that he didn't do, it was because he couldn't. And that's different from you, like if they can't, or if they if they want to, or if they can't. That's a want and can't is different. And there were some things he just couldn't do because he did not have the capacity, he did not have the knowledge, the information on how to do some of those specific things that I was looking for. So I feel so fully loved by my father now, because I realized he loved me with the best that he had. So whatever he was able to do, whatever he was even able to show me, it was from a place of love, and it was 100% capacity. So it wasn't just a little bit, and he had more that he could have done. I thoroughly believe is if my father could have, if he had capacity to do more, he would have do more. So it's not from a place where he didn't want to, he couldn't, he didn't have it. And so knowing that he gave, he loved with everything that he had, man, like I have some shells, like, and again, these are things like when it was sent to me, I was like, what? So my father sent me some shells. We're from the islands, right? So I don't know, like, and this is years now he sent me these shells, but bet you I still got them shells. And now they're like one of my prized possession, these shells that I have like on display, because I'm like, nobody touch my shells. My father gave me this, because even then when I still maybe had some indifference, it was like, these are a lot of shells, like where did he, it wasn't something I took and tossed to the side. It was something I always held on to, because for the amount of shells that he gave me, he had to pick for them. There was intent in him getting those and sending them to me. I don't even know in the moment like what it really meant, like why he sent me shells, like I don't really, but now when I look at those shells, like my father took time and picked these shells for me. I was fiercely loved by my father. So when I think of that, like I was fiercely loved by my father. No longer do I look at it from the place of the insufficiency that like I didn't get everything. No, I got everything that he had to give. And if he had more, to give, he would have given me. So I knew that he gave me all that he had. So I have those shells. I have that last thing that he said. I have that to hold on to. And so when I think of it, like I say like, yeah, I am a girl dad because my father loved me. I don't think about, and it's even hard for my mind to even think of about the negative things. I'm like,
Mhm.
no, my father loved me. So,
Yeah.
it's so interesting because now God even shows me like the correlation to, I think like one of the points, or the core goals, not goals, I forgot, like in the book, I'm sorry. One of them were protection, right? Because a father, that's one of the things like a father does is protection. And so I mentioned that because I mentioned his career choice starting out. My father was a teen dad also, so I should point that out. There's
Yeah.
only so much options they had, and back in 1985. So not not faulting him or anything, but one of the things that came along with that profession was a level of popularity, so to speak,
Yeah.
or a protection. So, even so, whereas like I grew up in probably one of the worst neighborhoods on the island. Yeah.
Mhm.
But I could walk through. I can't do it now. It's not the same. I can't do it now. However, as a kid, like growing up, like I could walk through the neighborhood like nothing because I know no one was gonna touch me. Why? Because I was Tasha's daughter. Like you won't dare. You won't dare
Yeah.
touch, so it's like, no, because I'll even hear even like when I like high school, the guys would try to like roll on you and stuff like that. They'd be like, not that one. Because I would hear them. No, not her. Let her go. That's Tasha's daughter. You're like, you don't want that. You don't want
You don't want
that.
those problems.
No. And so, it's so funny, like, so even with that, like that level of protection. So that was like, yeah, I already know, like, they know, like, I'm going to be protected just because I know who my father is. And even if you switch, because I'm always like spiritual. So even you switch that over, like, that's how some of us need to kind of walk through just on this world. Like, yeah, no, I'm the king's kid. Like, you're not going to touch me. Like, I'm protected.
Yeah.
Everyone knows who my dad is, and so in the spiritual realm they already know, like, yeah, we see the light in her, that's one of his. Let's not. Let's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, yeah, and real quickly, because like I said before, we were recording. You were telling me about even at the time of recording this, that your dad's birthday, I think, is soon.
Yes, it's coming up on Sunday, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah. And then you mentioned about the your attire, what you have
Oh,
on.
yeah, my
Yeah, yeah,
jersey. So this is just really in commemoration of my dad, and then I don't know if you can see it on here, but it's just a picture of my dad. This is what we wore at the funeral, and so we're also gonna wear this on his birthday as well, just to commemorate and just in remembrance of him. But this is actually a jersey with his name on it. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, Sunny, and then our last name on the back. So yeah.
yeah. I love it. I love it. And we're going to transition really quick, but I wanted to share something because you mentioned about the shells that your dad gave you, and how years later and after his passing, it took on a different meaning, right? So my mom passed away some years ago, and at the time that she passed, even though we were in a good space
Hmm.
at that time, maybe a couple years before, we had kind of hit some should I say a rough patch, should I say, because of some decisions that I made, for my life. And as your parent, they have their view of what they want you to do and who they want you to be. And
Hmm.
so, not that my decisions were wrong, they just was my decisions. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And we didn't necessarily see eye to eye. And one of the things that, even coming out of that space, one of the things that I always stayed on my mind was, did I make my mom proud? Right. And so even though, afterwards our, relationship, we were good, we were in a good space, when my mom passed. But when she passed, that was a thought that always came to my mind. Like, did I make my mom proud? Like, before she passed, was she proud of me? And after she passed, I was going through some things that I had, because I keep, I keep little keepsakes and things of that nature. And I came across a card. It wasn't even a card; it was a piece of paper that my mom had wrote me in 1994. I was 19. I think I was 19 years old. My
Hmm.
mom was a poet, and so she wrote poetry. So on this piece of notebook paper, in her handwriting with a pen, she wrote this poem for my birthday. And the very end, the last stanza of the poem ended with, "You make me very proud." Now, she wrote this in 94. I was 19 years old when my mom wrote that poem for me. I was like in my 30s when my mom passed away. So after she passed and me dealing with those feelings of, did I make my mom proud, to come across that poem at that time, in that time period, and to read that in her own words, her own handwriting, that I made her proud, it really touched me in a different space. It meant so much to me in a different light. And so a lot of times in the midst of our journeys with our parents, and our loved ones in general, there are going to be some things that in the moment it might be like, okay, thank you, I appreciate it. But in hindsight, some years later, those same very things will take on a whole new meaning and mean so much more to us, as the letter did to me, and those shells mean to you with your dad. So I just wanted to point that out for our listeners. Make sure you keep those little things, during the
Yeah.
years, because it may not seem like much in the moment,
In the moment,
but
yeah.
when that time comes where it's going to take up so much more meaning to you, um, that this person actually took out the time to do something for you. So yeah, just wanted to point that out because that touched me with the seashells. So we're going to transition a little bit to what I call the getting to the core segment. Right. And so for all of my listeners, to get into the core segment, it's based off of the ebook that I wrote called The Core Four, which is the four core values that every daughter should get from her father. You guys can get your copy of The Core Four at ebooksbyejames.com. Again, that's ebooksbyejames.com. You can get your copy of The Core Four. And so when we talk about the Core Four and those values are guidance, affirmation, love and affection, and protection. And so I know you talked a little bit about, your dad protecting you, but I'll just, just ask the question and allow you to reiterate, if that's the same answer that you want. But of those four values, now in hindsight, and even thinking back on, where you were as a kid growing up, of those four values, which one of those values would probably have meant, and still, means the most to you to receive from your dad?
So to kind of like pick one of them, or like out of the
Well,
four,
you can pick
or
one of the four, but if multiple, you can speak on multiple. But of those values, which ones kind of resonate with you the most?
so I would say the love, affection, and affirmation.
Mm,
Those would stand out the most. All are important, but those would stand out the most, especially for a little girl, because we need that reassurance. We need that affirmation, that we're smart, that we're capable of anything. We that affirmation is the world. And when it comes from your father, you don't have to look for it from anywhere else. But even not to say, it can't come from anywhere else.
mhm,
The capacity that you have, it's already filled up by your dad. So if someone comes along and they're trying to affirm you, or just use like, okay, yeah, I know that because my dad tells me that every day, like, you got
mhm,
something else, like, so now they're gonna have to step the bar up into even approaching you. How to treat you is a level of a respect that you have for yourself, because you understand and you receive that from your father. So now the bar, or the just really the boundary of the people that you let into your life, more referring to like males, the person you choose to marry, is
mhm.
there's certain things that you would accept because the president was already set by your father.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love it. And so the next question that I always ask, the ebook is called The Core Four. So it's the four core values that every daughter should receive from her father. But if you could add a fifth value, what would that be and why?
Identity.
Mhm,
Identity. Yeah, that's important. Understanding who you are, why you are here, and that you have value and
yeah.
purpose. That, coupled with all the others, that is like a solid foundation. a very solid foundation. So a lot, really that's the father. Think when you think of father, the word it's meaning, it's the source,
Mhm.
right? Because we come from our fathers, right? And so,
Right.
but understanding the source. So when the source is teaching you, like, look at the source even like as the manufacturer, like, God is the creator, right? So who better to tell you who you are than your father, right? To give you to tell you your identity, that you are this, like, because for you to be able to identify even the gifts that you see in your child and to be able to speak to that, affirm to that, I think identity is a key piece. Understanding your identity, the more you understand that, the younger you understand that, the more solid of a strong foundation that is within your whole being. Yeah,
Mhm.
identity.
I love it. I love it. Abigail, I appreciate you so much for coming on and to sharing your story and your experience with your dad. Um, I want you to leave us with a word of advice for the fathers, for the daughters, however you feel, and also with your social media handles and things of that nature, where we can find you and follow you. So I'll give you a couple seconds to think about that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Make sure you guys are checking us out, or checking me out rather, on my website, our main website, which is the dealhealfulfill.org website. Again, that's dealhealfulfill.org. And also make sure that you guys check me out on my new website, personal website, to have me to come out as a speaker or facilitator at your school or organization. And that is EarnestJamesSpeaksLife.com. Again, ErnestJamesSpeaksLife.com. Make sure you guys go there and check it out. Also, we talked about the Core 4 ebook, but there are also a couple other ebooks that I've written, including From Males to Men, which is a male mentoring ebook, and one of my favorite ones that I've written called Forgiving Me, the 4-Step Guide to Self Forgiveness. All of those ebooks can be found at ebooksbyejames.com. Make sure you guys go there and purchase an ebook. And then we have Deal to Heal Tees. That's Deal the number two healtees.com, which is our inspirational t-shirt line. Excuse me. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. Not only can you find our inspirational tees, but you can also find our podcast merch, which is our t-shirts with our podcast logos on it. There's one for the Girl Dad Discussions podcast and one also for the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Again, that's Deal to Heal Tees. Deal, the number two, healtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. Last but not least, over the last couple of years, I've been blessed to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops bi-monthly discussing forgiveness and everything around it. So we talk about the forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, forgiveness of the world. It's everything surrounding forgiveness, because I believe that the conversation of forgiveness is priceless. So we have these free virtual workshops. You guys can go to forgivenessmission.com in order to sign up for our next free virtual workshop. Or you can go to Eventbrite and look up the Forgiveness Workshop sponsored by the Forgiveness Mission. Again, these workshops are absolutely free, but the information is priceless. So whenever you're listening to this episode, either a workshop just ended or there's one coming up. So make sure you go to Forgiveness Mission to sign up for our next free virtual workshop talking about forgiveness, which I think is very important to us all. Again, Abigail, thank you so very much for being on the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. I appreciate you being here. I want you to have the last word, so the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It was an honor. I appreciate you. So to find me on any social media is at the Battle Ready Wife, at the Battle Ready Wife, and then you can just find everything that's going on with me is on my website, Battle Ready Wives .com. And then so that gives you a link to everything that I have going on. Currently, we do have a free devotional, 5-day devotional on there that you can download. And it has links to all of the social media, all of the videos and podcasts that I've been a part of. Right now, everything that you need to find out, it's on the battlereadywives.com website. And I have to stick on this word capacity. It's still like, I feel like it's such a rich, deep word that there's so much revelation in it to still be uncovered. And so the last thing I want to leave you with, because I mentioned it as far as understanding that my father's capacity, and that he loved me at the capacity that he had, and it was enough because that's all that he had. I think we need to all take time to really consider what is our capacity, not just the other people in our lives, but what is our capacity. And it even ties into when we think about our identity. When you understand who you are and how you are to show up in this world, you understand your capacity. And so now you operate from that. There won't be no more burnout because you won't be trying to do more and do things that you were not called to do. So when I say the word capacity, I want you to take time to sit down and really consider, what is your capacity? Ask the Lord in prayer, what is my capacity? And a good way to tell is like, if you're in a place that you feel burned out, you feel there's some resentment, there is a possibility that you're doing more than you have the capacity to do. So to even reassess your life, how you're showing up in people's life, because maybe maybe you're giving too much out of what you have, and you're not giving enough for you're doing things from a very dry place, barren, because you're giving more than you actually have the capacity to give. And so I would just leave you with that to, consider your capacity, consider the capacity of others, because maybe you're expecting too much out of them than they have the capacity to give.
I love it. I love it. We can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, where we believe that the relationship between the dad and daughter is one of the most important relationships in a young lady's life. So until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our podcast on all your podcast listening platforms. Also, don't keep it to yourself, but share it with someone else. That the Girl Dad Discussions podcast is on the air. Until next time, be blessed.